Welcome back to beautiful Nicaragua, and today we're going to dedicate this video to telling you guys how we went from a coffee seed now to a coffee nursery, and how we're taking this plant out to the field where it's going to be planted permanently to eventually produce coffee here in beautiful Nicaragua. Now, our experience here is typically what is done here in Nicaragua. It varies per country, so we're going to share what worked for us in hopes that to give you some insight what goes on behind a cup of coffee, or if you're looking to do this yourself, then you can kind of get an idea how things are done. So let's go ahead and jump in on the story on how we did this. Now, we're building a coffee farm out here in Nicaragua, so we have to plant coffee every year. And the way we got started was understanding the farm's location. So you want to know your farm's elevation, how high or how many meters above sea level you are. You want to know your soil conditions, and you also want to decide what kind of coffee you want to produce, because coffee itself will produce different flavors, will yield differently, will have different statues, like one would be bigger, one would be smaller. So each variety has different characteristics. So as a farmer or a producer, you kind of want to establish what you want exactly. So once you know what variety you want, next order of business is finding your seeds. Now, the seeds can be found two ways. You can go to a certified nursery, which are very hard to find and uncommon here in Nicaragua. Number two is that if you already have an existing plantation on your farm and you just want to propagate the seeds, basically pull seeds out of that, then you can go harvest those seeds. Actually, there's a third way that I forgot to mention, which is getting seeds from your neighbor friend. But then again, you can never confirm the varietal or the genetics behind it. You can kind of get an idea, but if he didn't get it from a certified nursery, there's really no trace on it. So we decided to go with option number two. So we went out to the field to look for our seeds, and really that's where everything got started. Now, picking out seeds from your farm is not as easy as showing up to the tree and just picking the seed. So what you want to do is you want to look at your plantation and you want to identify trees that are healthy, have the right characteristics, are stronger in pest control, meaning that they don't get it sick often. They're high yielding and high producing. So you want to really find your best players out in the field. It's kind of like a baseball game. You want to find your MVP trees, the ones that are outshine the rest and have been good throughout the years. So once you identify those trees, what you want to do is you want to start picking the seeds. So here I have a coffee cherry in my hand. So your goal is to pull these coffee cherries. Now, before you start pulling though, we have to realize that you can't go pluck any of the cherries just off the tree and it's going to be okay. What you want to do is you want to identify the middle of the tree and then start plucking all the cherries from the middle of the tree and the ones that are closer to the main stem that's growing up. And the reason you want to do that is because these cherries are the ones that mostly develop the best and the ones that are the healthiest and the ones that are denser. So when you pick your seeds, you want to pick cherries that are looking good, nice and healthy, and you want to pick them from the right location of the tree. So once you have identified your trees, you know what location to pick from, then you have to go pluck the seeds. And when you're plucking, you want to look for ones that are the optimal ripeness, like this one right here. You see, you want to look for a deep wine red, not super over red, because that means that it's been over mature and it's past its point. You want to find it at the right ripeness. So when you do pluck it and you go to germinate, you have the best chance for high yielding germination banks. And we're going to get into that next. But those are the main things. Tip number one, find the MVP trees out in the field. Tip number two, select the best seeds, meaning know where you're pulling your seeds from, know the location of the branches. And tip number three, always make sure that that tree that you're picking from is not too young, so that it's not only 3 years old that's been out in the field. Try to get anywhere above 5 years that it's been out in the field. Let the tree be more mature, and you want to pull seeds from those trees. So don't pull seeds from trees that are too young. So after you take the pulp away from the seed, you have two options. You can place it to germinate immediately. That means that you can place it in the sand. Or option number two, you can dry it for a little bit. So now this is where it gets tricky, right? When you're drying your seeds, you don't want to over dry your seeds, because if you over dry your seeds, then you're going to lose the ability and the viability to germinate. basically you're gonna kill the soul inside the seed and you're gonna lose the ability to germinate. So that's what tends to happen when you go out and you buy seeds from other farms. What I've noticed, and it happened to me in the past, is I bought seeds that were old. And because these seeds were old, when I went to germinate them, only 50% of what I bought germinated. Now, the beauty of pulling seeds from your own farm is that you can measure this and you know exactly when you pull them. So, rule of passage, I say that coffee, the moisture content in this seed shouldn't go below 28%. And you can measure this by weighing the coffee throughout the process, or you can buy a little moisture meter where you put the coffee in there and you measure moisture. So I try to keep the moisture high so the viability of the coffee bean is high. So that's what we did. We pulped it and we only gave it sun for 2 days. And then after that, we were ready to put it into the germination bank. So after you already have the seeds, so let's say you went out to the field and you picked your seeds, the next step is an order, and that is germinating those seeds. Now here in Nicaragua, it is common for the seeds to be germinated in germination banks that are made out of river sand. And the reason they use river sand, it's because it's easy to use, it's clean, it's sterile. So you want to sterilize it. You can do that by pouring hot water into it to kill any germs or bacteria that might impact the seed. And it's easy for the root of the seed to break through. So what we did here in the farm is that we took recycled wood. So we found pieces of wood, branches, and we built these germination banks and brought some river sand and put it inside. So after the germination banks were built, we had a bed where we were gonna germinate these seeds. Now, the reason I love this method is because it's cost effective, it's cheap, it's quick, you can dismantle it and you can move it. So those are the main things that we're looking for here. We're keeping cost in mind. We're keeping also the reuse of materials on the farm in mind when we do these kind of things. Now, putting seeds in the germination bank. Now, when you're gonna do this, it's not as simple as plucking the seeds in there. What you wanna do is you wanna create rows and you wanna put the seed not too deep into the soil, because what's gonna happen is the seed is gonna develop into a soldier. So it's gonna start to sprout and it'll start to stand up. So if you are too deep in the soil, you're gonna impede its growth and it's not gonna come out correctly. So we created rows and then we sprinkled the seeds in each row and then we lightly covered it with sand and we watered it. So after that, the next steps are important. You have to make sure that your sand stays moist throughout the process. So if it was really hot, then we would water in the morning and in the afternoon. But if it rained throughout the day, we will throttle back the watering. We would just monitor to see how dry the sand was. And what you're doing here is creating the environment, the temperature, the water, the moisture, everything for the seed to boom, sprout, and stand up. So you have to make sure you're careful. Now, second thing that I want to mention, and a tip when it comes to creating the germination bank, is that you want to make sure that your germination bank doesn't have big pebbles or big rocks. It's just more fine sand. This error I made 2 years ago when I started a germination bank. And what happened was that I left big rocks inside the germination bank, and this impeded the roots to going down. The roots would hit the rocks and then turn up, and basically you had a problem. Your roots did not develop correctly. So this year we actually sifted our sand before we put it in the germination bank to make sure that their sand was soft enough so you can actually have the roots develop correctly. Now, let's say you came up to this point and you have your seeds in the germination bank. What can you expect after that? Well, the coffee is gonna stay in there between 45 to 60 days. So this is how long you're gonna have to water your coffee. Now, during that watering process, of course, you're gonna monitor everything. There's gonna be weeds that are growing that you have to clean out, make sure animals are not going in the germination banks. But after that, you're gonna start to see the soldier stand up. And this is like an exciting time because then you can start to see the fruit of your labors just sprout. And to think that these coffee plants are gonna go caffeinate someone else in a different country is just a beautiful thought in my mind. But these guys now are standing up. So these are becoming soldiers. So they're standing up in the germination bank. Now, this is when things need to start lining up. You need to start planning your next move. So while the soldier is standing up, you wanna start getting your nursery ready. That means where you're gonna take your soldier over to your bag, like what you see behind me here. You want to identify an area that is flat. You don't want an area that is too tilted, or an area where you puddle water, or an area that's really dirty. You want an area that's accessible, that is clean. If for some reason your land is really steep, like those mountains right behind me, what you can do is you can create flat areas. You can dig to level out the flat areas and then make your nursery there. But once you have your area identified, you want to clean up your area, take the weeds out, take any structures out. You might want to sterilize the area if it's infected with anything, but for us it wasn't, so we didn't have to do that. But after you clean the area where it's going to go, this is where you have a couple options after that. So we opted to use a plastic bag here to create this nursery. Now this plastic bag is small, so what we do is that we go to another area of the farm where the soil is good. It has good organic matter. The composition of the soil is good. It's not too much clay. It's not too much sand. And what we do is we sift this soil. So we work the soil and we accumulate enough soil to be able to fill enough plastic bags for the full nursery. So this is where the process can be really time consuming. And now here, this is where if you have a farm, that you can always have organic soil being created. So that way, if you're ever doing a nursery every year, you just have soil to pull from. But if you're not doing that, then you have to go out to the field and pull soil from the bare ground, which is very time consuming. Another option that you have instead of using plastic bags is to use these little plastic cones that are reusable throughout the years. Now, those are great if you're doing small volume, but once you're doing large volume, it gets very expensive because the infrastructure to set those up costs a lot more. These plastic bags, we can put them in the ground, and then after we can take them out to the field quickly, and then we just dispose of them properly and we're done. And they're cheap, very cheap. So after us sifting through the sand, sifting through the dirt, we had the pile ready and we started filling bags. And the way you want to fill the bags is that you want to fill it up and you want to compact the bag. You don't want the bag to be too loose. You want it to have a little bit of pressure all the way to the top. And then we started creating rows where our nursery would be formed. Now, a couple of tips when making these rows is that you want to create some type of organization. So when you do count them, it's easy to count. So you can say that your rows are going to be 5 by 5 bags by 100 bags deep. So that way you can go 5 by 100 is 500. That bank has 500 coffee bags. So it's easy in your mind. Also, if you have different varieties, you want to distinguish your banks in different locations. Or if they're right next to each other, you want to create a label to make sure that the team doesn't get confused. And where we run into problems here is that once the plant has grown, it's kind of hard to tell the difference when they're that tiny. When they're bigger, you can spot it immediately because the way the leaf is created, the way the cherry looks. But when they're tiny, the team easily can get confused. So you got to give them the tools in order for them not to mess up. So the way to do that is to label everything properly. So once you have labeled everything properly, you've created your banks, and then you have everything rowed up. Your nursery is ready to be transplanted. And this is where we get on to the next step. We're back to the germination bank. We have the nursery ready. The soldier is starting to stand up, and it's important for us to have everything lined up. So now back at the germination bank, what we're gonna wanna do is make sure that we pull the soldiers out in enough time. Because if we let the soldier sit in the germination bank for too long, what's gonna happen is the root will start going down deeper and deeper and deeper. And when you pull it out, the root is gonna be way too long and it's gonna be hard to work with. Now, this is where you need to pay a close attention to your team, to detail, because this is where you can make a big mistake. When you're transplanting the soldiers from the germination bank over to the nursery and you pull out the soldier, you're gonna notice that one of the tap roots is straight down. And where you're gonna put that tap root into the plastic bag, you want to make sure that you're putting that root in straight down and that you're not bending that root up or bending it sideways, because what will happen is that will lead to malformations of the plant. The plant won't develop as properly, the plant will develop slower, it won't be as productive because the main tap root is going somewhere south side where it should be going straight down. And the way you avoid that is, number one, when you're pulling coffee soldiers out of your germination bank, you want to establish a QC, a quality control inspection process. You want to train your team and tell them, if you pull out a soldier and you see that the root, one, hasn't developed correctly, two, the root already started turning the other way, three, that you see that there's two roots, main roots coming down instead of one, then what you do is you separate that aside and you're not going to be planting that. Now, it's crucial that these guys are very well trained and that the supervisor or someone that's in charge is there watching this, because this is where the mistakes can be made. So you have to make sure that your QC is strong at the germination bank. So ideally, after you're done with the germination, you have pulled out soldiers that have straight roots, aren't too long, there aren't any crooked roots, any broken roots, any malformations, any Ys, and they're pretty solid and healthy. And this way you're guaranteeing yourself a healthy plant out in the field in the future. So with the germination bank now being pulled out, it's time to put them inside the plastic bags. And I'm gonna share with you some tips on what to do so you don't bend the roots. Now, when do you pull out the soldier? When do you know it's time to pull out the soldier from the germination bank? The way we do it here in Nicaragua is we pull it out once we notice that the head of the soldier, where the coffee seed is standing up straight. So that means that the coffee soldier is getting ready for the next phase, which is sprouting out leaves. And now that's when it's gonna start asking for nutrition. So you wanna get it out of the sand, because then there's not gonna be no nutrition in there. The roots are gonna be too big and it's gonna be more difficult to transplant. So that's the rule of thumb we use here. When the head of the seed is standing up straight, we know it's go, go, go time to get these soldiers out of the germination bank. Now, after the soldier has been placed into the plastic bag, the soldier will sit here for up to 3 to 6 months. And the reason there's such a wide range there, it's because it depends on the size of the bag you use. If you are using a bag that is small, narrow, but tall, you're only gonna have up to like 3 months in this kind of bag here before the main root tries to break out. And if it can't break out, guess what? It's coming up, and then you have your problem again. So you want to make sure that you're aware of the bag size you're using and you're planning out in the field so everything lines up. So when this is ready to go, your plantation out there is ready to be transplanted. So you have to think about that. Now, if you need more time, what you can do is just get bigger bags. So you get a bigger bag, but just also be conscious that because it's a bigger bag, you're going to be slower at filling bags. You're going to have to move more dirt. They're heavier, so you're going to move less bags out to the field. So everything just tacks on. So in my opinion, I think 3 months is adequate to generate what you need and also to prep out in the field. And plus, it's a perfect balance between lightweight and labor, that you don't need to spend as much labor or move as much soil, and it's easier on the teen's back, which is most important here. So 3 to 6 months out here in the coffee nursery. So one thing I need to touch base on is nutrition of the plant. So after you have your nursery set up, there's a certain way you're supposed to give your plant nutrition. Now, there isn't one recipe for everyone. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about what we did, but really it comes down to what you want to do and what you've been advised to do. You need to get kind of input from your local agricultural people who know what they're doing in that sector, or if yourself, you know what you're doing. If you want to go fully organic, then you know exactly what to do. But what we did is we did a combo of both. We did some organic fertilization every 15 days, and then we did some synthetic fertilization, nothing toxic. It was mainly just like minerals sprayed to the top. So every 15 days, it got something for the next 3 to 6 months. And that is because it's in development phase. It is growing, it's like a baby. So you want the roots to develop strong. So before you take it out to the field, it has a good chance of surviving and thriving. So we were doing every 15 days, we were applying fertilization. And from there, we're also taking care of it. We're cleaning out the weeds. We're identifying sick plants. We're looking out for plagues. But look behind me, see? Because of this, we have a nice, healthy area and a nice, healthy nursery that we can move on to the next set of things on the farm. So what they're doing behind me right now is they're pulling out coffee plants that are going to go out to the field. Now, it may look simple, like they're actually just pulling out what's available, but no. So before you take these plants out to the field, right? Let's say it's already the time to go. You've been babying these coffee plants like your child. You've been fertilizing them every 15 to 25 days, whatever you've been told. And now you're like, all right, I'm pumped. I got the field ready. I'm ready to plant this. don't send all the plants out. What you need to do, there's one more step. First, you need to walk through and identify your strongest plants. So you need to sort your nursery. And that is exactly what we did. We spent some time separating plants that are weaker than others. So take a look at this. You see this plant right here, small. It's over like 3 months in. It's like 3.5 months. It didn't develop properly. Check this one out. Look at that. It's double the size. So you wouldn't want to send this out to the field. You would want to send this bad boy out. You want to send your MVP home run hitters out to the field. So you want to select this. And this is what these guys are doing. They're carrying them out already because we spent the time sorting them. But slowly, this nursery is dwindling away. And I'm so happy right now because we're putting plants out in the field. And we're about to head to the field soon so I can show you. But what I wanted to say about this, though. So let's say you have 500 plant nursery and you have maybe 100 of them like this. Don't get rid of them yet. You can give them maybe one more month, give them some nutrition, and see if you can recover them. If they come back to life and they develop correctly, then you can put them back out in the field. But out of those 100, maybe you can recover 50. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna pull this out to look at the root. Maybe there's a root that didn't develop correctly. Let's see. Oh, look at that. The root system was developing off over to the side. I broke it off, but it's hard to see here, but it was starting to take a left. So meaning it was going that way. So eventually this root system that would have been here would have hit this bag right here and not developed correctly. So I bet you that this guy right here has a better root system that's going in the right way. So things to know about a coffee nursery. Overall, it's not really difficult. You just got to watch out those major key points that might mess everything else up. 2 years ago, I had a plan to make a 20,000 plant nursery, and I messed up so badly. I only ended up with like 5,000 plants, which is horrible. But hey, it's you live and you learn experience, and from there now I know what to do. You know, so it was kind of like the school of hard knocks there. But let's go out to the field and see how everything else is going out there, and I'll tell you about how to establish a coffee plantation and how to plant this coffee. If you're still watching this video, you are a true champion. If I could see you in person, I would buy you a cup of coffee because this is a very detailed video, and I think it's for the coffee aficionado or people who love to learn things, right? So for me, it's really interesting because I love coffee. Comment below if you're still watching at this point here. All right, guys, welcome to the field. Right behind me is Teodoro. He's like 58 years old, and he's out here planting coffee. So there's no excuses. Get out of the couch and come help me. No, I'm just kidding. So we're out in the field, right? Now, before you get your coffee in the ground, there's a lot of land prep that needs to happen. I'm going to make a whole video dedicated for that because it's just that lengthy. But to give you guys a top-down view, bird's eye view, your land needs to be taken care of. And what I mean about that is you need to think about planting on curvature. Meaning you see this row of coffee right here, it follows the curves of the mountain to help protect against soil erosion. And also you need to think about shade. Is there permanent shade, temporary shade? Are you going to be planting more trees? On top of that, I recommend that you get a soil analysis before you do anything, because you want to plant your coffee where there's an area that the plant's going to succeed, where it has the right organic matter. But maybe you don't have an area where it's like fully developed and correct, then you need to start working towards putting those conditions, planting trees, fertilizing, putting organic matter in the ground so you can develop your health of the soil. So there's a lot of things when it comes to this. We spent about 3 weeks prepping this land here, cleaning up, digging holes, doing the curvature lines, and we still need to plant trees, which we're gonna plant along with these coffee plants. But when you're planting these coffee nursery out in the field, here's a couple things that you need to watch for. Number one is you need to make sure you remove the bag. There was a story about a farmer out here in Nicaragua that had his team plant over 20,000 plants, and he wasn't there when it was done. And what ended up happening is that his team just plopped the coffee bag in there with the plastic bag. And they didn't find out until 6-8 months later, once the tree wasn't developing, and they pulled it out and they saw that the plastic was still in the hole. So that's an obvious statement, right? Rip the bag off and put it in a pocket or collect it. Don't leave it out in the field. But it just goes to show if you're not out here watching or you don't have your people well trained, then stuff like that can happen. Now, if you take a look at right here, you see these are just recently planted trees, and they're collecting their bags right here. So a major tip is that if you grab a stick, then you can just insert the bags in the stick. And then what you do is you count your bags at the end of your shift so you know how many coffee plants you planted. But look how beautiful that looks right there, you see? With the little house nicely made around, and it's following the curvature of the land. You can see a wraparound. I mean, it's beautiful to be out here in nature working this way, because you're working with nature instead of trying to destroy nature just for profits. So you notice that Teodoro right now is opening the bag, so he's gonna rip it open. Then he has the roots. Look how they develop. There's no tap root at the bottom popping out, which is great. He'll place a little coffee plant in there, then grab some soil and start to fill the hole right there. And he'll compact a little bit as he moves along. Then you'll start to make the little house. You'll start to make this little house right here, as you can see, around, which is level to the coffee. And look how nice that looks. That to me is a setup for success and a delicious cup of coffee in the morning there. Look at this. We care about the coffee, we care about the people here. So it's important for us that everything gets done correctly. And he moves on to the next one here, and he has his bag that he's counting throughout the day. Now you want to try to divide your team while you're doing this in a way that you're efficient, because it can take a long time to get the coffee planted. But what we're doing here is we have a team of 4. So we have 2 people planting the coffee. But then we have a team of 2, that's Checho over there. And there's one more person over here that is hauling the coffee. So these guys will go all the way back to where we were, and they will bring coffee up, and they will distribute the coffee where it's gonna be planted. So these guys will go, and then they will rotate with them, because it's backbreaking work. So if anyone ever says that cup of coffee is too expensive, you show them this video out here and show them those big things that they're carrying on their back. If you had a farm that was more accessible, you can drive your truck a little bit closer, but this is the way we're doing it here, because we're up in the jungles and it's pretty inclined. Also on top of that, it's not only about the plants. At the end of the day, it's about the people that work at the farm. So you want to make sure you give them good working conditions. So when you build establish a coffee plot, you want to make sure that you make roads that are accessible for them. So build some hiking trails, put some conditions there where they can pull coffee out of the mountains without breaking their backs. Because at the end of the day, it's someone that's going to have to come here, handpick these coffees, and walk them out of these mountains. So just make sure you take care of your team here. So what do you guys think about the overall process of germinating coffee and planting coffee? Does it seem difficult? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm very passionate about this. So for me, I love being out here in nature, planting coffee. And I think what I love most about it is working with nature. So making sure you're building trails, planting trees, and leaving roots on the ground that your kids are gonna be able to enjoy years from now. Look how awesome this view is with this cup of coffee here. Amazing. Right behind me, you see plants that are around 2 years old. And this year is going to be the first year we're going to pull somewhat of a harvest there. So we're going to be able to try those plants. Well, we started from a little seed on a coffee tree, and we ended with roots on the ground and a beautiful cup of coffee. So I hope you enjoyed this video. We're building this beautiful coffee farm out here in Nicaragua. Make sure you join and subscribe this EmenseCoffee movement, because the more people join, the more trees I can plant, the more people I can hire, the more coffee we can grow and sell, and the more videos we can make to educate and entertain people about coffee at farm level. So it is your Coffee Familia signing off from beautiful Nicaragua. I'll see you guys in next week's video.